Hey everybody, here's our next little video about the idea of federalism. One of the things we talked about in our very introduction, one of the main ideas of the Constitution is dividing power in our country. So we don't just have one government, we got three governments, right? We have our national government, our state governments, our local governments that we all got to follow. Each of them have different roles, different rules, and sometimes they stay in their lane, sometimes they all get kind of mixed together. We'll talk about how that works, okay? So why do we do this, right? Why not just have one government for everybody? Well, number one, the idea that too much government power poses a threat to liberty, right? So the idea that we can make sure that things are more free, things are more fair, the closer we are to government, okay? Number two, we try to restrain that government. So by not letting the federal government do everything, states have some say too. And then we help divide that power up and make sure no one government gets too powerful overall. So remember to talk about that Articles of Confederation, right? On the Articles, it was like this. Here are the states. Here's the federal government. The states had all the power. Federal government had nothing. Couldn't make taxes. Couldn't make an army. All that kind of stuff. We want to be more like this, balancing all the states, right, against the federal government. And so we have a dual system, right? We have our state government. We have our local government, our federal government. They all work in their own area of authority. Think of it like cake, all right? Hopefully you like cake. If you have layer cake, so if you have layered cakes, you have marble cakes, think about a layer. Underneath this idea of dual federalism of where we keep everything separate, every government stays in their own layer. They don't infiltrate the other sections, all right? There's that little layer of frosting there that kind of keeps them away. So you hear the phrase stay in your lane. I say you stay in your layer. Federal takes care of federal stuff. State takes care of state stuff. Local takes care of local stuff, just like that. So we have our certain things that they take care of and nobody else worries about, okay? Another way, it's all about the lower little things, right? Local action on local matters, national action on national matters. Don't get involved in each other things. So a federal government might be deciding who to go to war with. Individual states might be doing a death penalty. A local municipality might be deciding to put a stoplight in. That kind of thing, okay? Now, the federal government has three types of powers given to it in the federal government, okay? They have their expressed or directly stated powers, their implied powers, and their inherent powers. So express powers are the whole things listed in Article 1, Section 8. All the things like make taxes, print money, regulate interstate commerce, anything across the state lines they can regulate, declare war, control the armed forces, all that kind of stuff, okay? What they're told they are allowed to do as listed. Now, the implied power is a little bit different. That is done through the necessary and proper clause, also called the elastic clause, right? They said that make all laws necessary and proper for carrying out the other powers of the Constitution. So you can make an army. That means you can. It means you can have a draft. It means you can buy tanks. You can make military bases. If you can collect taxes, you can establish the IRS, which is the Internal Revenue Service. Do that. You can make a national bank. You can put somebody in jail for not paying their taxes. If you can regulate commerce, right, regulate businesses, you can say you cannot bring in certain goods from a country. You cannot export certain goods to a country. You may say you have to have certain regulation on certain goods that cross state lines. Great example is cars. If you ever see somebody with a classic car from back in the 40s and 50s, there are no seatbelts in that car. Seatbelts were not a requirement until the 1960s. It became a requirement to have seatbelts, okay, because they crossed state lines. But mandatory seatbelt laws did not start in every single state until the 90s. So it's kind of where that implied power comes in. They can do more than is written as long as it kind of relates to the other stuff that's in there. We also have our inherent powers. So essentially, these are powers the government has because they're a government, all right? So they can do things like immigration, deportations, protect the country from rebellion, diplomatic kind of stuff. Basic things we have because we're a country, all right? So a lot of people think, wow, that federal government has all this power. The state's got to be itty-bitty, right? Not so true, all right? Not so true. The states have what's called the reserve powers. Remember that 10th Amendment we talked about in the last little video there? All the things not in the Constitution go to the states. So what does that mean? Things like age to get married, selling of pornography, gambling, licenses for teachers, doctors, EMTs, lawyers, all that kind of stuff, public schools, land use. A lot of the things that we follow on a day-to-day basis are actually state laws and not federal laws, okay? And they can make laws about all different kinds of stuff. What's funny is that one of the things that's a state law is a 21-year-old drinking age. Yet, every single state has a 21-year-old drinking age. Well, that's because as time has gone on a little bit, we've seen the federal government influence state laws through federal benefits. Essentially, the federal government can use money to influence what the states do. We call this a more marble cake, or a more like mixed federalism, where essentially other things kind of getting mixed up here, right? Before you had that nice kind of layers that separate everything, now things are kind of mixed up. So the federal government can either offer money or penalize the states by way of money for not doing what they want them to do. And so the federal government gets kind of up in the state's business and encourages them to make certain laws because they can give them money or take money away. There are a couple things the states cannot do, by the way. They cannot print money, cannot make alliances, they can't tax the federal government, they can't take away your rights, okay? And so the federal government makes sure that stuff does not happen. Now, sometimes powers overlap. They're called concurrent powers. That means that state and federal government can do both things, like you have state tax and federal taxes. You have a state court and a federal court. You have state crimes and you have federal crimes. You have state police, you have national law enforcement. Just know that those are all things that kind of go that way too. Now, what if the laws conflict? Well, it's back to Article 6 of our Constitution. If the Constitution is number 1 and Congress is number 2, states are number 3. So if two things disagree, we always have to go to the federal thing. So you kind of see this little chart. We'll give you this chart in class too, of where some of the main delegated powers are, the reserve powers, and some of the ones that are in between. That's your quick look at federalism. We'll do some more stuff with this in class. Thanks for your attention. I really appreciate it.